Hi, boys and girls, Mrs. Batliner, and I'm ready to read book 3 of our March Madness competition in our books. Our story today is called Gaston. Have you ever heard of the name Gaston before? Yeah, when I hear that name, the very first thing I thought of was the movie Beauty and the Beast with Gaston in there. Right? Wasn't he the big muscular guy? So, our story today is written by Kelly DiPuccio. So, if she wrote the story, what is she? Yeah, she's the author, and pictures are by Christian Robinson. So, if he drew the pictures, he is the what? Yeah, he's the illustrator. So, our next pages, if you notice, um, on the left-hand side, this is the dedication page, and this is the title page. So way up on the bulletin board there, they are dedicating this. So Kelly is dedicating it to her brothers, Ronnie and Michael, and Christian is dedicating it to his high school art teacher, Miss Kim. So it's kind of neat when you write a story, you can dedicate the story to whomever you like. Mrs. Poodle admired her new puppies, Fifi, Foo, Ooh La La, and Gaston. So take a look at those dogs, those puppies. Are they the same? No, if you look, 3/4 of them look a certain way, and 1/4, Gaston, looks a little bit different. Would you like to see them again? Fifi, Foo, Ooh La La, and Gaston. Perfectly precious, aren't they? Mrs. Poodle thought so too. The puppies grew, as puppies do. 3 were no bigger than teacups. The 4th, however, continued to grow and grow until he was the size of the teapot. So if you kind of look at the other ones, the 3 of them are really, really tiny. But Gaston was pretty big. Mrs. Poodle took pride in teaching her puppies how to be proper pooches. They were taught to sip, never slobber. Good. Well done. Very nice. Nice try. So look at poor Gaston and look at all the water he has all over the place. They were taught to yip, never yap. Yip, yip, yip. Ruff. Is Gaston the same as his sisters and brothers? No, he's really different, isn't he? And they were taught to walk with grace, never race. Tip-toe, tippy-toe. Whoa! The puppies were also taught how to look pretty in pink, nibble their kibble, and ride in style. Whatever the lesson, Gaston always worked the hardest, practiced the longest, and smiled the biggest. If you have a dog, do you think you could carry your dog in a bag like that? No, my dogs are too big. I don't think they'd fit in there. Mrs. Poodle was very pleased with all of her puppies. Fifi, Foofa, Foo, Ooh La La, and Gaston. Spring arrived, and the proud mother was eager to show off her darlings. She took them to the park for their very first stroll in public. There was so much to see. Daffodils, ducklings, dogs. Oh dear, who do we have here? Rocky, Ricky, Bruno, and Antoinette. Would you like to see them again? So boys and girls, take a look at those two illustrations. What do you notice? What do you notice? Yeah, Gaston looks like the puppies on the right side, and Antoinette looks like the puppies on the left side of the page. So, Rocky, Ricky, Bruno, and Antoinette. This was more than a little awkward. The mother sized up the pups. The pups sized up one another. Seems there's been a terrible mistake, Mrs. Bulldog said, breaking the silence. Oui, oui, Mrs. Poodle agreed sadly. Whatever shall we do? Mrs. Bulldog could not come up with an answer. I guess we'll let them decide, she replied at last. So if you kind of look, on the one side we have 3 poodles and a bulldog. On the other side we have 3 bulldogs and a poodle. Gaston and Antoinette were young, but even they could see that there had been a mix-up. The 2 puppies began to circle around and around the group. Gaston walked with grace. Antoinette raced. Gaston yipped. Antoinette yapped. And when they finally came to a stop, the puppies had traded spaces. There, that looked right. It just didn't feel right. So if something looks right but doesn't feel right, do you think you should stay? So if it looks right, like all the puppies look the same, but they're like, oh, it just doesn't feel right. Do you think they should stay with who they look like? We'll have to find out. That night, Antoinette tried to fit in with her new sisters, but she did not like anything proper or precious or pink. Phooey! On the other side of town, Gaston tried to fit in with his new brothers, but he did not like anything brutish or brawny or brown. Ick. Antoinette and Gaston weren't the only ones who were having a hard time adjusting. So look at the parents. Yeah, look at on Gaston's side over there with Antoinette. They're all sitting properly, and Antoinette's barking, barking, barking. The next morning, Mrs. Poodle forgot all about being proper and raced back to the park. Mrs. Bulldog was already there, waiting with her burly brood. It seems we've made a terrible mistake, she nearly shouted. Oui, oui, Mrs. Poodle agreed happily. This time, Gaston and Antoinette wasted no time trading places. There, that looked right, and it felt right, too. From that day forward, the families met in the park every afternoon to play. Rocky, Ricky, Bruno, and Antoinette taught the poodle puppies a thing or two about being tough. Likewise, Fifi, Fufu, Ooh La La, and Gaston taught the bulldog puppies a thing or two about being tender. And many years later, when Gaston and Antoinette fell in love and had puppies of their own, they taught them to be whatever they wanted to be. So look at how fun those illustrations are. Look, some of the bulldogs have puffs on their tails. Yeah, it looks pretty interesting. So, what do you think this book means? What do you think it means? It's a kind of an interesting question. Yeah, it's an interesting question, right? So, all right, I think like the illustrator kind of says it best when it's like just like Gaston, Christian Robinson had learned that what looks right might not always feel right. Today, Christian is happy to say that illustrating children's books such as Harlem's Little Blackbird by Renee Watson and Rain by Linda Ashman feels very right to him. So sometimes when you do things, it just doesn't feel right, right? But then things that like are totally different, you may enjoy to do. So I'm assuming that Christian maybe have had a different job and it just didn't feel right. But then when he started to illustrate, he's like, hey, this is what I want to do. So I hope you enjoyed this story, and it will be going against another book very soon. Catch you next time.